Hey everyone, it's Sam Mackay here. Today we are going to dive into some customer information, and I really want to showcase just a couple of relatively simple things but can really allow you to discover insights in a really intuitive way. Now, I'm going to showcase these techniques or these features by diving into customer margins. So in a lot of cases, we want to keep real close tabs on what is happening with our customer margins. And in this case, I'm evaluating, well, what has happened between this year and last year? Have customer margins contracted or have they expanded? And I really want to drill into the ones that have contracted and be like, well, what is going on? You know, is it to do with some competition with that customer? Is it to do with the salesperson not getting the right margin from the customer? Is it to do with a store? So on and so forth. So through analyzing margins, you can actually evaluate that stuff pretty well. And so within this dashboard, we can click between any state. In this case, you could set this up in a number of different ways. Obviously, you could actually drill into a specific store, but in this case, I'm looking at states that we sell in, and I'm evaluating, and I'm only actually looking at the margins less than zero because those are the only ones. Those are the ones I want to focus in on here. And you would think that you would have to write potentially some complex DAX measure to actually calculate this, or to actually calculate the change in margin, but you don't. You can actually use some natural filtering inside of Power BI to actually achieve this insight or extract this insight from your information. So just as an example of what we're specifically looking at here is I'm filtered for New York. I want to actually look at all of the sales we've made in New York, and I'm looking at all of my customers here. And I'm saying, okay, out of all of my customers, whose margin has contracted the most? And we can see here that there's a small little cluster of customers, and I want to know why. What products have they purchased? Who was the salesperson? Which particular store did they buy it in? And then I want to see, well, how much was the actual sale and profits? And so what I can do is I can actually come into the scatter plot or scatter chart. I can select all of these elements here, and I can have a look and see if is there anything common in the actual raw data. So down in this table here, I've got every single order, every single purchase, and I've got all of the details for that purchase. I've got the customer, the salesperson, the county, state, name, name of the city, that could be name of the store, the actual profit margin on the sale, the total sales and total profit. So really granular information there, right? And so we've started, if you think about it, this could be a massive data set, and we're really drilling into the real detail here and discovering, okay, what is going on? Why is it? Is it because these products, these particular products we had on sale or something, or we discounted them? Are there any common products that just pop up all the time, or is there salespeople who are just totally cutting the price every time to make a sale? These are the sort of things that you could discover with this insight. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I actually did it. I'm going to show you how, from start to finish, how we actually build this analysis, and within that I'm going to show you some cool techniques around just natural filtering. You don't have to actually write complex DAX in a lot of cases. Okay, so the first thing we've got to do, I've already created some simple core measures here, so total sales, profits, costs, etc. So the first thing we've got to do is we've actually got to work out, okay, what is our profit margins, obviously, right? So I'm just going to create this measure. I'm going to go profit margins. I'm going to call it profit margins. And this is not difficult. This is not difficult at all. I'm just going to go divide total profits by our total sales. As simple as that. Just going to make sure that this is actually the percentage is a percent. The format is percent. And then what we want to do is we want to start setting up. We've got to work out. We're analyzing over time, right? And so I want to compare 2017 to 2016. What I've done is I've said, okay, well, let's put a page level filter on 2017. And so profit margins, for example, this result here, that's going to be our profit margins for 2017. That's looking at everything that we've sold in 2017. But what I want to do is I want to compare this profit margin to our profit margin last year. And so we can do that very easily with some time intelligence functions. And I'm just going to go new measure here, and I'm going to go profit margins, LY for last year. And then I'm just going to go calculate profit margins, and then same period last year. Really, really simple stuff. And then I'm just going to make sure that this is formatted as well. And if you think about that, now we actually have this result here too. Well, we can actually now work out, well, what is the change? What is the customer margin expansion or contraction over time between 2017 and 2016? So I then just have to go margin change, and I'm going to go profits this year minus profits last year. And then I just want to make sure that this is formatted as well. Okay, so now we can actually start making our dashboard. It doesn't take that much evaluating, really. So what I can do, this is perfect. This is a perfect piece of analysis for a scatter plot, because this is where, or a scatter chart, because this is where we want to really find clusters of information. And so I'm going to grab in one axis I'm going to put my profit margin, the other one I'm going to put my margin change. What I might do is I might switch that over actually. And then obviously we've got to split this up by something. We've actually got to put something in the details, and this is where we bring in our customer name. And then this is where we're going to get that cluster, right? This is where we're going to get this clustering of data. And so I'm just going to do a little bit more setup. I'm going to grab my state here. And this is how we can filter on the state, turn that into a filter. And then I'm going to set up my table down the bottom here. And this is where I can grab, because of the data model we've got here, I can then bring elements from all of my lookup tables and compare them or contrast them next to either something in the sales table or any formula we've done over the sales table. So I can go and grab, I'm going to grab my order ID, because I want to look at every individual order. If the margins have contracted, I want to go and look at that particular order. And then I'm going to actually then bring in all of these different elements. I'm going to bring in my product name. I'm going to bring in the county it was sold in, the state it was sold in, the name of the store, which customer bought it. And then I'm going to bring in some of these details here, the total sales, total profits, and then we can look at profit margins as well. And that's how you can quickly create tables of information. Okay, so there's a few other things we've got to do though. There's a few other things we've got to do to make this insights useful. Now the first issue I can quickly identify is you see these elements over here. Now the margin change is exactly the same as the profit margin. Now why is that? The reason is because there was actually no sale the year before. So that's a pretty useless insight if you think about it. That's always going to show, okay, well there was this massive margin change because the margin last year was zero because there was no sale. So what we have to do here to actually get rid of those is we need to create a measure that goes and works out what the total transactions were last year. Now I've already got total transactions for this current year, 2017, and so I'm going to create a function or create a formula called transactions last year, and I'm going to use exactly the same technique we used just before, and I'm going to go total transactions, and I'm going to go same period last year, and then put in my dates column. And then what we can do is, and this is where we can start using some natural filtering inside of Power BI Desktop, is we've got these filters on the right hand side, right? I can go and select this visual, go and grab the total transactions last year, put it into the visual level filters. So just let me drag and drop this. And then I can put an additional filter. So the cool thing about this is you don't have to write complex DAX formula for all of these little things that you might want to filter in or filter out. And so what I can do is I can say, okay, well, if sales last year were greater, so I want to filter only those that are greater than zero, right? And that's how I got rid. I can very quickly get rid of all of those erroneous numbers that don't actually mean anything. Okay, and hopefully you can figure out, okay, well we're looking at the contracted margins, right? So we want to get rid of anything that expanded. I want to really drill into and only have this chart isolate the margins that have contracted. And so we can again come back to this filtering section, and I can say, okay, well let's go and have a look at margin change and only look at values which are less than, in this case, 0, right? And then apply that filter, and you see how it automatically changes the chart. So quick to actually get to that insight. Really awesome stuff. And then what we can do is we can now I guess we've got the insight we want. We probably just want to, if you think about it, just make it look a little bit better. And so we might want to have a play around with, say, we might want to look at total trend. We might want to add some size to these bubbles. We might also want to put, I think, a border looks good here. We could also change the color. I think the color could do with make it pop a little bit more. And we could, sometimes I actually like to change the background here as well. Cool, okay. And then lastly, probably what we want to do is we can add some information into our tooltips as well. And so now we can click into any state and have a look at, well, just the margins that have contracted. Okay, so I've gone through a number of techniques there. The main one I wanted to showcase is that we stepped through, we branched through some DAX logic, but then we were able to really drill even deeper into a particular insight by utilizing these additional filters on the right hand side, the visual level filter or page level filters. You can use a variety of them. And what it means though is it really it allows you to find or drill into these pieces of information without having to go and write really complex formula. In some cases you can, and it can produce even more insight, but for things like this, I think this is perfect. I mean, we were really able to really drill into the exact insight that we wanted, and then we can then select into that visual, and we could even multi-select, for example, just like I did before in the demonstration. And then this is what's going to isolate each level of granular detail inside our data, so we can have a look at, okay, well, this is the profit margins. Why has it contracted? What's happened? Is it because this customer has got a promotion from us? Is it because the salesperson didn't extract the correct amount of margin? So on and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to round things off there. We went into a bit of detail. Hopefully you enjoyed the content. If you did, throw the video a like. Really appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe for fresh Power BI content every weekday. If you want to download this Power BI file, you can, just a small investment. Details are in the description. Okay, all the best. Hopefully you can utilize these techniques in your own analysis. Until next time, speak to you then.